Hey, what's going on? Today I want to look at how to build this exploding text animation on Nathan Smith's website. This won Site of the Day from Awards. And here's my implementation of his animation. It's a little bit different. As you'll see, it doesn't go as exaggerated, but something cool about mine, I think, is that it actually randomizes the Y height and the rotation each time that you hover in. Anyways, pretty simple to implement. To start, you'll just go to the boost sections on my website, go to exploding text here, and we'll go ahead and copy this inside the head tag. And I have something open in Webflow here. It's just a wrapper with a heading, some text that's a phone number, these are links, and then a bottom wrapper, which is flexbox with two texts. And so I'm going to animate all three of these, and I want this to animate just the color change, but not the actual explosion. So copy those inside the head tag scripts. So we'll come to our inside head tag here. I'm going to zoom in one, and we'll paste that there. And next I'll go back to the exploding text instructions, and I'll just copy all of this code here. I'm going to copy that, come back to Webflow, and we'll just drop that right in here. Now these are all things that you can adjust up at the top. I don't think I can. Yeah, I'm going to stay at this zoom. And so these are the attributes that we want to add to our elements in order to let Webflow know which ones we want to animate. So they both have the same attribute name, WB exploding text. So I'll copy that and save this. And now to this text one, I'm going to add that exploding text name. And then I just want to make sure that I get the attribute value correct, which is this animated text here. And so now the value is going to be animated text. And that one's good. And let's copy this, and we'll add it here. And this is animated text. And we'll do it here. Animated text. And now for the web bay heading here, I'm going to do a custom attribute with the same name but a different value. So I'll just call it static text. And we should just be able to publish. And I'll refresh here. And we've got this exploding text effect. Now I'm going to show you how it works. So I use GSAP and the split type library to animate these, to animate the text like I did. And the basics of how I'm going to do it are I loop through each character. Whoa, 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 we don't want that. Come on now. Don't do this to me. Okay. And we're going to apply some math to each character. So we know this one we want to move over. We want to do this negative 100% in the X direction. And this character here, we want to move over 100% in the Y direction. Sorry, in the positive X direction, so plus, not the Y direction. And then we're going to interpolate between negative 100% and positive 100% so that the one in the middle, I don't know if it's this one or this one, whatever, would go 0, and this one might go like 10%, this negative 10%, and this one would go positive 10%, that kind of thing. So that's how we're dealing with the X coordinate. And then the Y, we're alternating for each character. So for this one here, the Y, we want it to go up, and this one here, we want it to go down, and this one here, we want it to go up, and this one here, we want it to go down. And I don't interpolate or anything like that. What I do is I'm offsetting by, I think, 25% to start. So Y% starts at 25%, and then there's a random offset being applied of 15%. So each time you hover over it, there's a chance, so you'll get to this point, 25%, but then you may go 15% this way or 15% back this way. Same thing with this one. You may go 15% this way, 15% this way. Same thing with this one, and I don't need to keep explaining it. And then the last thing we want to do is apply a rotation. And so the rotation is just going to be a rotation between, where is it here, negative 15 and positive 15. So those are kind of what these constants are doing here. And of course, you could adjust these to get your own values if you want it to be more subtle or you want it to be more intense. But I'll go over the code of how to do that. And I've got it modular, so hopefully it makes a lot of sense. So first we have our constants. So Y%, we talked about what that 25 is. The random offset, we talked about that. The X%, that's the, and it's relative to itself, not to the width of its container. So that's something important to note when you're doing transforms. It's relative to itself. And then we have our random rotation. value. We're also going to set an active color and an inactive color. So you could change these. I could have done this with opacity and you wouldn't have to do any of your own hex codes or anything like that, but I went ahead with color on this one and nobody can stop me. And then these are the attribute names that we want to use. So you saw in the beginning of the video, we had this WB exploding text as animated text. Anything that exploding needs to get that attribute, and anything else that's part of the animation but doesn't actually explode, it just gets the color change, just needs some sort of attribute with a name. Okay. So now we want to write our function that interpolates the value from negative X% to positive X%. And the way to do this is really it's just a linear function. I think it's something like, I don't know, the slope is like 200. I'm going back to 7th grade here. 200 over n, where n is the length of the string, times x minus 100. Or whatever the X% value is. Anyways, we'll see right now. So I've got a function defined called get X%. That takes in the length of the string and the string index. And it's going to return X% times 2 times the index. So I missed, well, the index is like behaving as X here. And then X% is the value that we're passing up here. And then we're dividing by string length minus 1. So this was the n that I was talking about earlier. And then all that is minus X%. So if this was a y equals mx plus b, we have m is this divided by this, x is this, and b is negative X%. Sweet. 7th grade coming back at you strong when you're 34 years old. Returns y% value to translate the character. So this is our function that's going to give us the y value that we want to get for the percent. So we'll call it get y%, and that takes a parameter called string index. And we're just going to get a random integer between negative y% offset max and positive y% offset max. I can delete this here, but I'm just going to control Z so it's going to stay there, and there's nothing I can do right now. So just imagine this was a plus sign. Thanks for believing in me. And so let's define a variable called random offset, and we'll set that equal to, don't be confused by this. Math.floor is really just going to convert everything to an integer for us at the end, but math.random is a function that will return a random value between 0 and 1. But if we want that to be a random value between negative y% offset max and positive y% offset max, then what we do is we multiply that times 2, add 1, and then we subtract the random offset max. You could just go into ChatGPT and say, JavaScript, get me an integer between negative 20 and positive 20, and it's going to spit out something like this, where this would be 20 and this would be 20. So that's how you do that. And then we want to alternate y%. Remember, it's going up, down, up, down, up, down. So all we're going to do for that is use the modulo operator. So if we modulo by 2, it's going to return either 1 or 0 every other character. And so if it does return 0, then we want to do y% times negative 1. If it doesn't, then we turn y%. So this is just an easy way of, if something's even or odd, returning a value based on that. This is called a ternary expression, which just sets our y% variable to positive y%, sorry, negative y% here, or positive y% based on the return value of this statement here, of whether this is true or false. Hopefully not too confusing. You could do this with if-else statements too. And so now I'm just going to return y% plus random offset. Now the last thing we need to define is our rotation value, and this is probably the easiest one. We're just going to define a function called getRandomRotation. It's a function that takes no parameters, and we'll return, again, just very similar to what we had up here, so I'm not going to explain it, but this is based on our rotation random offset max that we defined up here. Okay, so now that we have all our helper functions, we want to go ahead and add our mouse enter event, or the hover event. And to do that, we're going to call this, we're going to wait for the document DOM content loaded event to fire. And now this is because we are deferring these script tags. And what that means is that these will not happen until, or these need to download before the DOM content loaded action fires. So we can be sure that these are going to download, and then we'll fire our function down here, exploding text. Back here, we're calling it exploding text, so let's define that now. So I define it up above here. Exploding text is a function that takes no parameters. And first we want to select all our elements. So we'll call query selector all on our animate attribute name. This is the one up here. And then we'll get all text elements as well, and we'll do query selector all with the general attribute name. these both return what are called node lists. Nothing we need to get into now, but just something to know about, something we can iterate through. And now if we can't find anything, we don't want to try to execute the rest of our code because it's just going to throw errors. So we'll say if there's no exploding text elements, then we will warn in the console, no attributes found with that name, and we'll return. You could do it for all text elements as well, but I'm not going to do it in this case. Next, we're going to loop through each exploding text element. So I'm calling the for each function there and giving it a callback, and the callback takes a parameter. It's exploding text element, so this is going to be each one within this node list. And then we're going to execute some code on that. The first thing we want to do is split the text element into characters. We can do that really easily with that split type library that I was talking about. So we'll call new split type, and exploding text element will get passed into there. And then we'll create a variable called chars and just get it split text.chars. This returns, I believe, an array of the characters. Sorry, not the characters, of the elements on the page that happen to be the characters. Now we're going to listen for the hover event. So on this exploding text element, we'll call add event listener, and we will listen for the mouse enter, which is essentially your hover in event. And now we'll give it a callback function, no parameters. If there's no characters, then if this returns nothing, basically we just return, because we're going to do some code on this characters array. The other thing we want to do is that once we've hovered in, we actually want to get all of our text elements and loop through those, because we're going to want to change the color on some, but not actually make them explode. So if it matches the element we want to animate, which we can find out by saying if this element that we're getting here in this for each loop equals to the exploding text element, which is the one we're interested in with the hover event, then we want to run some code. Now we're going to use GSAP, and we're going to pass it the exploding text element, so the whole thing, and we're going to set the active color on it. And then we're going to loop through all of the characters, and we're going to get our x% value by calling our get x% function. We're going to pass in the length of characters and the index. We're going to get y% by using our get y% function, just passing the index this time. And then rotate z doesn't take any parameters, get random rotation. And now we're going to use GSAP again, and for each character, we're going to set its x%, set its y%, and set its rotate z. And GSAP's going to take care of the duration and the easing all for us. We're just going to use the default values in this case. Now else, there's an else statement here, is that if it's not the element that we're actually exploding, then we just want to change the color on it. So we're going to call gsap.to, pass it the element, which is the one from all text elements, and set the color to inactive color. Okay, so we have our hover in. Now we want to set our hover out. And to do that, we're going to add event listener on the same exploding text element. So same one is up here. And we're going to call mouse leave, give it a callback function, which is defined here. If there's no characters, then we return. Otherwise, we want to reset everything to their original positions. We'll call gsap.to, pass the chars array here, set x% back to 0, y% back to 0, and rotate z to 0. And then we'll reset color to active color for all text elements. So all text elements dot for each. We'll call the gsap.to, the element, and we'll pass color as active color. And that is everything you need to know to code this on your own. I hope you have fun changing some of these values up here, and of course the colors. If there's anything else you'd like to see, please let me know. Also, if this helped you, please subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And I will see you for the next video. Bye-bye. Yeah.